aluminum tubes to be used with it. So we have 4 250 millimeter length arms. These are 115 millimeter extensions on the arms that hold the rotating rotors. And this is the connector between the body that we're going to put all our component mounts on. And so we got 250, and we can order those just straight, already cut. These are 115 and 180. Build up our first piece. We have piece number 8, C8, has a hole down the center of it. This is for a 1/4 inch dowel that we're going to cut at 2 3/4 inch, 2.75 inch, and slide it in there while epoxying it. And so the trick is, once you mix it up, to drip it into this side of the piece, the hole, so that when you slide it in there with the epoxy on there, that this nub right here will be dry as it comes all the way out the end there, and then you just rub off the excess and get as much epoxy in there as possible. But we want that to dry without any epoxy on it, so if you get some on there, wipe it off, because it's going to slip into another piece and they're going to pivot on each other. So that's build up of piece 8. So we epoxied up and we made 4 of them now, all with the nub sticking out. So we're going to build up an outer extension of an arm, and we have our C8 that we glued a dowel into, and these are 2 number 6s that clasp together around this and have a square part to go around the 115 millimeter extension arm, which is also 4.5 inches. This is a 440 by 1.25 inch length socket bolt with a washer and a nylon nut, 3 32nd Allen, and I just use this to hold on to the nut. So here it is kind of assembled. We have our 440 bolt going through that top hole. Alright, so I've built up 4 of them. Just loosely snug those bolts so they can spin. We're going to find the center, right where this servo horn belongs on the shaft here, by plugging it into the receiver and find the center. So transmitter on first. Make sure we're plugging the signal in up on our receiver. And this is the battery pack that we're using on the back of the transmitter for the MindWave. I'm just going to power it up with that. So the black, the common, goes all the way to the bottom, and the red will end up in the middle on the second row down, because our first row is bind, so our second one is battery. So plug it in right there. Hear it move around a little bit. Alright, so I'm on channel 1, back and forth. Just going to let it go on there, and we're zeroed out on there. So there's our center. We wanted to put the horn pointing straight up the body area. So now we're going to put on our servo shoe. This is C7, and so we just put on our horn. This area right here goes around the horn. It's just like that. And then we're going to drop our screw down through the hole right there and tighten it down. Now we have that on there. These are 1/2 inch cylinder magnets, and so one goes into the servo shoe and the other into the pin. So you just press those into. If you print with the extruder a little low, the initial print gets mildly squashed, so there's kind of a lip in there. You can just kind of use anything and ream it out a little bit. So now there's just a little lip in there. So now these fit together, and the wooden dowel fits inside the servo shoe to pivot on. So there we are. So what this does is save the gearing inside the servo by the magnets splitting apart. So we made 4 of them and we laid them out so that we know how the bolts should be going through and how the wire is going to come out through the next part that we're going to build, the arms. To start off with the arm, so we're going to take rotor 1. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we took the first rotor. We're going to use C2 with it. And C2 holds the servo and holds along this bar, fits on, just like that. That wire's going to go back there. So that just kind of snaps into place. We're going to do that with 2, but what we're trying to do is the wire is going to run through the bottom of this and out to the motor aesthetics. So it runs through there, down through that hole and out. So if we want it to run down through the bottom of each one, so we got rotor 1, rotor 2. So this one's actually going to use C3, which is the flip side of that one. Do it like that. Here it is with the pieces on it, C2, C3, C2, C3. Since the connectors on the motor are male, we want the female ends of the extension wire to come up to where the motor's at. So what we want to do is find the right length of wire to come out of this hole. And we can do that by knowing that this motor mount has a little brace on there. We're going to run a panduit through there at around these wires. This way it keeps this wire from flexing. The wire that comes on the motor isn't as good a quality as this fine strand motor extension wire. So we want to make use of that. And we're going to zip tie the ends to right about there. So just to have enough length isn't quite enough because this is going to be rotating. Alright, so about 150 millimeter, about 6 inch. We'll take our 250 millimeter length square tube, and this is C3, still working with motor 1, so C3, fit just like that. We're going to pull the wire through. Get that in place. Make sure all the wire is tucked into the groove in there. And then we'll place C3 on there. So let's fasten this down. Now, all the holes on all the parts have this funny shape to it, and it's to run a zip tie through or a 440 bolt through. And on the smaller projects that we'll be doing later, the panduit part may come into play. Like we actually are going to zip tie right here, but on this guy, I just drop in a pattern that most likely fasten most of it down. Yeah, maybe we'll switch those two. So I'll fasten it down like that, and we still have 2 open holes. We can put a panduit or zip tie across this servo here. 4 arms complete, laid out how it should be, with the bolts going through the top and the wires underneath.